initial thoughts on the GFA's election after weeks and weeks of uncertainty, injunctions here and there. The association went ahead to hold its elective congress in Tamale. Kurt Okraku has been kept as GFA president for the next 4 years, barring anything that will emerge. Your initial thoughts on how all of this has unfolded up until this point?
Well, I think it's been chaotic any way you want to look at it, because you would have wished that all the things that have happened in the last month or so didn't take place at all, such that people filed their nominations, there were no disqualifications, there were no threats of going to court, or people like Alaji Gusa would not go to court even questioning how the election was going to be done. I would have wished that we didn't have all that. But then you look at what has happened in the last 4 years, where we've had an association that to a large extent, have not stuck to their own rules. You would expect that people would want to seek justice elsewhere. And that's why we've had the litany of court cases surrounding this election. It's very interesting for me that the FA didn't feel bothered at all by any of the court actions and still went to have this event today. It's very difficult for me to call it an election, because if you are looking at that of the ESCO, yes, there were people contesting for various seats, and so there was an election there. In the case of the FA president, I would not call that an election. I have said that there was no contest. We shouldn't make it look like there was a contest and Kurt won. He had no competitor. He had people who were ready to acclaim him, whether or not they liked him, and that is what happened. It's very unfortunate, because where our football had been 4 years ago was more problematic than we have had it look like now. And you would have wished that we would have grown out of that chaos that enveloped our game in 2018. I don't see that as having happened, because I think the system has been more divisive than a unifying force that will bring members of the association together. And I would wish that, I have said earlier in the day that I would wish that whether or not Kurt was acclaimed or he was elected, going into his second term in office, he would try as much as he can to bring everyone together, because you see, we need all hands to be on deck to run our game. How it has gone in the last 4 years, if it's going to go like that in the next 4 years, I don't think it will inure to the benefit of Ghana football. I listened to his speech. His speech after the acclamation. I don't think it met my expectation, but then you still have to give him the benefit of the doubt, because they have given him the power to continue, and we will have to sit back and watch or wait and see how he goes about his second term.
Jerome, from the perspective of a football fan who wants football to grow, the average person on the street wants football to be better. He wants a better quality league, better quality pitches, national teams should perform well. In the last few years, that has not been the case. But the insiders, or the football people, quote unquote, seem to have voted massively for Kurt Okraku. Why do you think that that's the case, especially when we see very obviously that things aren't working too well? Why would the football people accept to keep Kurt in power in their numbers for another 4 years?
That has been the trend. If you have followed our game closely over the years, and you have done that, in a long while now, for a long time now, you would realize that there's always a disconnect. There has always been a disconnect between what members of the public feel about our game and how they see it, and how the handful of people, I would say handful of people without any disrespect, they are just about 125 or 24 people who vote to decide on what happens in our game. There's always a disconnect between how they see things and how the public see things. And that is something that the current system must acknowledge and work on. Because see, if you take our national teams, apart from the Black Stars and maybe more recently the Black Queens, the other teams have not done so well. We've had national teams that have been banned for years. For the next 2 or 3 tournaments, they are not going to participate in any competition. We've had other national teams that even when we hosted the under-17 competition here, we could not perform, we could not qualify. We've had other teams like the under-20 that are struggling to find their feet, the same as the under-23. And for me, the management of the national teams, it's not Ghana football. Ghana football are the things you refer to, the domestic league, for example. How does it look? If the people who follow the game tell you that it is not as good as we want it, and you don't see any real change, then it establishes my point that there's a disconnect between those managing the game and those of us who are following it. And these admissions will have to be made so that going forward, whatever informs this disconnect will be addressed. Because we cannot continue the way we have done in the last 4 years. And I've pointed out that there have been some pointers to some good work. I mean, let's not make it look like everything Kurt has done is bad or is wrong. I think he has done some good work. It will be important for him to concentrate on that and do more in those areas. For instance, if you take women's football, anybody who follows the game will appreciate that there has been some changes. The changes I have seen in our women's football, for example, it's one that I will give all credit to the administration. But I believe more can be done. If you take the men's game, there's so much work to be done in that area. The level of investment is so low, and I would want to see how, for example, this administration will engage government so some money can be put into our domestic league. Otherwise, if we go the way we have gone, whereby when it's time for the Black Stars, everybody in the country wants to rally around them, to the extent that even the president of the land will want to lead a fundraising ceremony to make money for the team, so we qualify for competitions. But when it comes to the local league, it's nobody's business. Then we are not going to develop our game, because the life of our game is not in how the Black Stars perform, but how domestic competitions and other national teams collectively do well.
For your time, we really appreciate that. We've been speaking to Jerome Octhere, colleague journalist, and for many years editor of the Kurt Okraku Express.